Okay, everybody, welcome everybody to this webinar. For those who might not know, a while back we had the same webinar, but we had a lot of technical issues. And so for today, I'm really excited that we can finally have this session with you today. And our facilitators for today are myself and also Mr. Christopher Ahimbisibwe from Uganda. He's an IT risk and investigation manager from Uganda. So I'll let him introduce himself once he starts the session. But for now, I'll just like to pinpoint that this webinar is brought to you by Africa Cyber Immersion Center. And for those of you who don't know what Africa Cyber Immersion Center is, it's a research and training institute based here in Nairobi. And the whole goal is to churn out a lot of research and intelligence that is Africa-based. And we do a lot of training. At the moment, we are doing ethical hacking training, analytics and orchestration with SIEM, cyber risk quantification, which we call civic training. And we welcome you to attend some of the trainings that we are offering. So for next week, we actually have the ethical hacking training, which you are welcome to join. And for now, I'll ask Mr. Christopher, I think if you can turn on your, yes, so that people can see you. Hey, welcome. Hello.
Thank you. Can everybody see me or hear me?
I believe everyone can, but you can let us know in the comment section if you can see and hear Mr. Christopher. But I'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself and take us through the first session of this webinar.
All right, thank you, Brazil. Okay, to begin with, I'll just turn off my camera just to allow smooth stripping. So if you don't see my face, please don't worry. So to begin with, Christopher Ahimbisibwe is my name, and I'm currently based in Uganda. I'm in the banking environment currently. Formerly, I was in cement industry, which was more of a global cement industry. That's Lafarge for those who know it. My career basically, I've been in the area of IT security for the last, I think, 4 years, and I started in applications development. Currently, I'm handling risk management under IT as well. So that is IT risk management. So just that's a brief about me. So what we've looked at or what we're focusing on this today, this which we start to agree to do with Brazil. This was Brazil's idea. And I'll be taking you through just to let you understand what a SIEM is, whether you need one and which one, what are the ethics behind it, how do you get to understand which one, how do you get to choose. So basically, if your target is to acquire one, this is the best place for you. So to begin with, I have a quote there. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and a few minutes of cyber incident to ruin it. For someone who has been in IT for a long time, you wouldn't even need an explanation about this. It just basically tells you, you can take 10 years to build something, but a small cyber incident rains havoc on it and you're not able to recover. So let's begin. As we go down, we shall be seeing some of these, a few abbreviations. So I'd like you to just keep them in the mind. A SIEM, it's a security information and event management system or tool. Mostly they use the word tool most of the time. So if you hear the word SIEM tool, it's basically the same. UABA is just user entity behavior analytics, which is part of what a SIEM does. SOC, this is common among the IT security team. That's just a SOC, Security Operations Center, which involves the SOC team. So if you hear me saying the SOC team, I'm referring to these kinds of people. So we shall be focusing on 3 main questions. Technology is always changing. Are the SIEMs still relevant in your environment, in our environment, in the IT environment, in our businesses, in our organizations? And our question is, do organizations really need it? The other question is, what considerations do you need to put in place to settle for one? So should you need to buy one or to purchase one, to acquire one? What do you need to know? Okay. Please, as we go along, you can post your questions. Maybe we shall just answer them at the end of the session. So technology is always changing, and the SIEMs, are they still relevant? To begin with, I would say yes. Let's just start by understanding what a SIEM is. A SIEM is just a in a well-configured environment. It's just a tool an IT infrastructure that can help you gather. I'll just simplify it as much as possible, to gather, to collect, and aggregate log data. So basically, it's a tool that you connect to all IT devices to simplify it, and these devices will be pushing logs which the SIEM will pick, and it will be able to collect and aggregate to give you holistic information about what the environment is containing, especially what threats are in your environment. So to simplify it is just to collect data to help you understand the threats in your environment. As simple as that. Okay, so we said yes, we need the SIEMs. So how best, if the SIEMs are relevant, what can we do? What can be best be answered through just to simplify it, if they are relevant, yes, we know they are relevant, then what can we be able to do to understand how they really do work, and how do you come about to understand, to say, yes, I think this is a good item for me, or this is good for my environment. So let's understand how they work. It's the best way to get to know it. So SIEMs, they use pre-configured rules and statistical correlations and machine learning functionalities to just convert log data and events from security systems into actionable information. So basically here we're meaning you're collecting log incidents, threat trends, security from various devices in the environment. Then the system just puts them together and just does correlation to help you understand a holistic view of what your environment is contained. So once you've set it up very well, of which I'll be talking about, that is one of the areas that normally I noted among the few organizations where you find they get challenges and they don't really get the best out of it, even after getting such a good information about it, so they get challenges. So I'll be talking about that later. So this is just a clear picture of how a SIEM looks like and what it does. So at the top layer, it has the presentation environment where you find the dashboards, you find like events which have been logged, the reporting, basically to help you play around, to have the visibility of exactly what is happening and the trends. So basically it does the trend analysis, it does creates dashboards for you. So once all the events and logs have been collected, the next phase is it gets to give you high level data so that you can be able to know which ones are the critical ones, which ones are the medium ones, which ones are low, so that you can be able to create meaning out of them and to take action as needed. So in between just the engine which connects between the presentation, which is just what you view, and we have the probes. Now the probes are like the agents or the plugins. These are the ones which you use to plug into the different systems. So let's say you have your application, web application, you have your server, you have your firewall. So these are the probes which are put into the plug into these systems so that they can collect the data. And the data collected is what you view on top. So basically, this is how it is. So why are SIEMs relevant in our today's IT environment? One, you'll get to have the security logs, information analysis all in one place. So basically, you'll be eliminating the possibility of threats that go unnoticed. We normally have something in IT security environment, what we call blind spots. Now, in a normal world, a blind spot is somewhere where you can't see. So in a security environment, IT security environment, a blind spot in such an environment is threats which you're not able to see, which will go unnoticed. A good example is in case, for example, if you have like a vulnerability scanner, we can have one which runs once and we have one which continually monitors the environment. So a SIEM is that which like continually monitors the environment to help you capture what you wouldn't have captured. So basically, if at one time you're at home sleeping, it's still running. Tomorrow when you come, it's able to give you all that happened in the night or during the day, whichever day, so that you can be able to have all the visibility at any time. So that's how good it can be. The next importance is using the SIEMs functionality, you're able to detect suspicious behavior without having to manually do the analytics. I talked about an example of a vulnerability scanner. You don't have to run it manually to be able to know what was happening. It just keep running because of the agents which you put at the back end, and they keep pulling data even when you're not around or you're not you have not pushed it. So it's just like a live monitoring and creation and gathering of events and logs. So it's as good as that. I told you, I mentioned earlier about the UBA, that's a user and entity behavior analytics. So this is another part that makes it more helpful. So this I can explain this better in maybe, let's say, you have a database which you've also plugged in so that it can pick logs and events. And maybe at some point, there's some weird behavior or an unusual behavior on your database or on your server. And this helps you to do the analytics so that you can tell up to what extent is this behavior unusual. So let's say the usual data you get or the usual logs are like 10 logs a day. Tomorrow you wake up, you find it has 100 logs. So this visibility will, first of all, you'll get to know they are more than the usual. Secondly, it will create like a dashboard with a spike. So you get to know there's a challenge somewhere and to help you to take action and know which logs to affect and where to go to. It's as helpful as that. Then we go to other examples I gave, like unusual logins, maybe from another location. But one thing you need to know is this all depends on what plugins you've done, where you plugged it into. So if there are areas, or devices that you've not created the probes or installed the plugins, those will not be visible. So those will be their own blind spots. So maybe what you need to know is a SIEM is not like a scanner, like a security network vulnerability scanner that will do network or access discovery. This, you have to import the discovery. Yes, there are some which could have the plugin which allows that to happen, of which I'll mention down how to discover which one is. Okay, somebody is mentioning my audio is breaking. Branson, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, on my part, I can hear you.
Okay, I see Paul said audio is breaking.
Audio is breaking.
Okay, I hope it's better. Okay. So going back to the point, I highlighted earlier. Somebody says mine is clear, so great, that's good. The way you set it up matters a lot. I always emphasize this with everybody that I come across who wants to set it up, because it's as important as how you configure it. Most times you'll find employee CISOs or whichever the security teams are complaining about the systems they have, and you find the most challenges they get, the fights they're getting with the vendors are because the system is not well configured. So this one is one of them. It can be a SIEM, it can be any other system. This is just general knowledge. How you set it up matters a lot, because it will determine what information you get it out. Okay, let's go down. So it has the capability of collecting information. I talked about a holistic collection of information and security events, so that you can detect and be able to pick everything in one area and one location. And normally, how the other systems work, you can have an antivirus, you have a firewall, you have another, maybe an IDPS, whichever systems you have. But in a normal environment without a SIEM, you find you're collecting reports separately. So you have to collect information from an antivirus. You analyze it separately. You have to collect information from another location, analyze it separately. So the beauty with this one, once you plug in all the agents and they're working well, you have the view in one location and the analytics in the same location. So it will not analyze one machine at a go. It will analyze it will give a general view of an analysis of the events which are coming in. Okay, I'll continue. So that's an NB. So this one, I mentioned it earlier and I'll keep mentioning it. It's as good as the connected devices and systems and the configured roles. Just to give you a brief about the configured roles, if anybody has done, configured any scanner, maybe a vulnerability scanner, it can be a firewall. Yes, even a firewall is a good example. Now, a firewall, an example of a firewall is, it can be as good as the rules you configure on the firewall. If your rules are not that good, it's not going to give you information that you need. It's not going to protect as you required. So basically, a SIEM is the same thing, is the same as the configuration is almost the same. So how you set it up will matter a lot. If you configure wrong rules or rules which are maybe default, which came with the system that were not changed, or you didn't configure it very well, you'll get a lot of false positives. Okay, sometimes they say false positives are good, but to what extent? So you need to know to do good analysis to understand the clear picture of the environment. So if you don't set it up well, you're going to have challenges. One will be either false positives, or even some will be still like blind spots, meaning you're going to lose out information that you'd have needed to help you secure your environment. So that matters a lot. So again, do organizations still need SIEMs? This one I said a big yes, and I have no doubt about it. So the key information here is, depending on the size of your organization and the criticality of your business. Why do I say this? You could have a small business, but the information you handle is very critical. So you need a system which can help you collect data, log data, to be able to give you a holistic view of what your security landscape is, IT security landscape. So you will need it still. Now we go to big organizations. Why big organizations? Because they normally have a lot of gadgets, they have a lot of systems, they have a lot of applications, which you will find it will require a big number of the IT personnel to be able to manage them. So if you have this, you could have 3 or 2 people in the SOC center, and they are all managing this, because the system is helping you to do most of the work, and all they do is just analyze and create meaning and take action. It's as helpful as that. So basically, a big organization, next, how critical is the information? Now, me who's in banking, I can't stress enough how much I would need it, because basically we handle critical information. Any data that is an attraction to either a hacker or a fraudster is basically critical information. So you would need such a system to help you understand your environment and how to make it better. So SIEM as a service provides an avenue for products within a manageable cost for small. So this one, basically, I wanted to highlight the part where vendors that are available. Somebody might ask a question like, for me who has a small farm and I'm not ready to pay a lot of money. This one, maybe Precy will talk much about it, but I can just highlight on it. Current vendors have packages, especially those which are cloud-based, so that they give you a little bit of what you're able to pay for, so that you don't miss out on taking the whole big thing. You can take the service which you need. So it's as helpful as that. So maybe that one, Percy will dig deep into that. So what considerations need to be put in place to set off a SIEM? So to set off one, what do you need to know? What one needs to know is, a SIEM is not just a security log collection and management system. So it's not just there to collect data. That's one. And it's not just an events notification system. Now, why do I mention this? We have other systems which can collect logs. We have other systems which can do collect those, which can do events notification. So this is a combination of the two, and it's not an IDS or an IPS. This is just an intrusion detection system or an intrusion prediction system. This is not one of them. It only picks data from them. So if you have maybe a firewall, it will pick data from it. Instead of you going to the firewall to observe, to look at the events, to look at the logs separately, and then you go to your antivirus to do the same separately, a SIEM helps you to collect the data from both, but it does not do what they do, so that you don't mistake it for both, for the others. It does not replace them. Okay, so what is a good or robust SIEM supposed to be doing? Now, here, this will help you when you're going out to the market to understand what am I looking for that will help me. Now, a SIEM, a good one, should have these capabilities. One, it should have a centralized security data collection aggregation of logs and events. Now, there's collection, that's one step, where you get your probes, which are plugged in to pick data. Then it has another important part, which is very, very good for us. It does the aggregation and does the analytics. So if those are not there, then you're only collecting data and you're going to do the analytics yourself. So it's supposed to help you to do the analytics. And that's the part where I'll go to correlation of security events. Now, basically, it's just the same thing I've talked about from above. It does the correlation for you, identify the threats and the vulnerabilities. Now, how this is done for the threats to identify them, it normally plugs, depending on the one you choose, of which that part I think Brent will talk about it, which ones are available on the market. So depending on the one you get, it should be able to connect to the outside world. Most of them, they have engines which are able to pick information from their vendors, who, depending on who they are, who normally get data from the real world of the threats which are happening in the real world. And a good example is like your antivirus. It can normally come up and with the new threat sources to show you the threats in the environment. Basically, it picks this information from the real world and the data which is fed into to be able to correlate with what you have in your IT environment to see the vulnerabilities which are existing according to the current trends. So if it is not doing that, then if not, whatever you're going to look out for, if you find it does not have that functionality, then you're missing out some part of it. 3, it should be able to incorporate security data analytics and machine learning functionalities. Okay, I know some of them might not have robust machine learning capabilities or functionalities, but it should be able to do the analytics for you. That's a very, very important part. So that you can be able to do reviewing of some system abnormalities, because that is really key. That's exactly why you need it, to be able to know where do I have abnormalities and what can I do about them. A good one should be able to give you what the vulnerability is, what threat level, what risk are you exposed to. This is just in the analytics, of which that's the view you're supposed to be having. And some of them actually go to the extent of providing solutions, like what actions you should take, or if there's a patch you have to do, it will just have that other part to indicate the patch. Now, this information is picked from the real world sources. So basically, some of them you'll find they'll ask you to, it should be connected to the internet so that you can always pick that data. Okay, so 3, it should be able to have the threat intelligence feeds. Now, these are the feeds I was talking about. All that information you get above, some of them to be able to get the current information about the threats in the environment or the threats in the real world out there, it should be able to pick these feeds. Now, what these feeds do, they just keep getting that live information and try to correlate with what you have in your environment to see where the vulnerabilities are. Now, maybe another thing that I've experienced that I know would be helpful that I actually didn't even mention here. One thing I've seen some of them what they do is you might find like you have a threat in your, or a vulnerability in your environment of which you don't think it's a real big threat. Now, some of these SIEMs, what they do, it's able to show you, it can do the analytics or correlate to show you like however much you think it is low, it has a big impact. So basically it will show you, yes, it could be a medium threat, but the impact is high. So, and suggested actions. So you will be able to take action depending on how critical it is. Okay, going down, this I'm not going to see, that I've already mentioned most of it. Okay, considerations to be put in place to set off a SIEM. So now we're going to the part where you have to decide, now I've accepted, I believe I need one. What do I need to do? What do I need to consider? 1, the scope of your IT infrastructure environments and the risk exposure. This one, I can't stress it more because I've already even mentioned it earlier. Large organizations with a lot of, within a big number of devices, you need it. Risk exposure is how critical is your information, or how exposed are you. You might be having actually information which is not very critical, but then how exposed is it? As in, what challenges, what can go wrong? If you find what can go wrong is really, really high, then you need to be able to monitor your environment and be able to capture some of these risks before even a threat or something goes wrong. The ease of implementation. So let's say I've gotten one. How long can it take me? Will I need to take a month or two before it's finally installed? I set it up. Like I mentioned earlier, setting it up is very, very, very important. If you set it up wrongly, you're going to get wrong information. If you don't set it up well, it's not going to do a good job for you. I can give you an example of maybe one which I witnessed being set it up. It was able to collect some information, but because the setting up wasn't done well, of which the challenge was, it was being blocked from accessing information from the resources which it's supposed to pick information from. What you need to know, this is not a hacking tool. Some people, when you mention some of these tools, a vulnerability scanner or a SIEM, in the mind, somebody tends to think this is like a hacking tool. Yes, it has some of the features, but it does not really go an extra unless you give it the access it needs to access some of these tools. So an example I would give is, this is an environment which was set up, but it did not have enough access to collect the data. What you need to know, some of these systems, like a firewall, I can give you an example. Some of them are set it by default to block certain ports, to block certain requests from it. So unless it has the authorization it needs, it will not show you the information you need to know. So that's just a highlight of what can go wrong. So if you don't give it access it needs to access, it will not give you the information you need. So, and somebody else can take advantage of that in case they have the access. Normally, what you need to know is, in the current landscape, it's very, very difficult for an external person. Okay, I might not say very difficult, but these days it is hard for an external hacker to completely get in. And really, the earlier way, those days we used to think somebody sits outside somewhere and is just a guru and does things. Yes, but these days things have changed. The guru needs a person inside. He needs a weakness to get through with. So in other words, he will use just a small weakness, a small vulnerability. It could be a person. Most of the challenges we have in the IT security environment currently is the human resource. When you look at the current trend, is most of the weaknesses which are in the IT environment, the IT security environment, in the cyberspace, is it starts with somebody getting your credentials, getting your username, and how do they get it? It's just through coercive means. Once they get that information from you, then they get in. But how do they do it? They got some credentials from you. I can give you a simple example of in banking, for example. A hacker gets into a mobile banking system. How did he get there? He makes a call to contact center, and he claims he's a client. Now he pretends he has lost his password, but then along the way he manages to convince the contact center agent to even give him the username. So at the end of the day, he has two things: he has the username and he has the password. Now this was the vulnerability, the weakness that he could use to get into the whole system and corrupt the whole of it. Actually, he didn't corrupt it. He started picking money from different accounts and putting on another account. So how did he begin? It started with somebody inside. So it just so I brought it up just to show you how the implementation can be affected if you overlook certain things. So we go to the next item, the availability of support from the vendors. Now, why this is important, normally if somebody has set up, has given you a system, unless you have enough trained staff to do this, you need to confirm that the vendor is able to provide you support and to what extent. Because along the way, you might get challenges which the vendor needs to resolve, and at the end of the day, you can't resolve them. So you find a system that you purchase, which could be expensive sometimes, you have not achieved from what you wanted to get out of it. So basically, you need to confirm, do I have support from the vendor that I'm purchasing from? If the support is not there, then it's a weakness, a big one actually. Because even from my experience, I will tell you, the first like 1 to 3 months, especially configuring the rules, you need their support to be able to help you set it up. Even the props, the agents, Some of them you'll find your devices are refusing them, some of them are not even plugged in, others are failing to run. So there are some of these challenges, they will need their support. So if you don't find that you can get support from them, then it's still a challenge, then look for another. The next one, the experience and expertise of your SOC team or the IT team or the IT security team. Are your teams supported enough, or do they have enough skills to be able to run this? Okay, we have the SOC team, which will be there once the whole system is set up, to be able just to correlate, to be able to understand the analytics, to read the reports and provide information to management, whoever it is. But then, are they able to understand this information? Generally, most security teams are able to, but then they will need a simple training, of which we'll go back to the upper one. Are the vendors able to provide this information, this simple training? Do they have enough documentation for you to be able to understand? Okay, a good number of them do this, but still, you need to look out for that. Okay? So, just a summary of the considerations. What are the requirements you need? One, we say the scope of the environment. Two, find out which products are in the market. Basically, here, what I'm trying to mean here is do enough research. Yes, you know, there's this one, there's the other one. They are number, but they are good, those which are good. However much there are a number of them. And maybe another thing that I need to put across, some of them may claim that they are SIEMs, but you find they are only security like events they collect data only, but they don't do correlations, they don't do analytics. And remember, I mentioned it's supposed to provide you that information. So you need to look through. If you say somebody says, yes, I can provide you this, there's enough information you need to get about them. Good enough, some of them even provide demos. Others are able to give you a demo for a whole month. You set it up, you run it, you see how it works. If you appreciate, then you can go ahead. Most of them are normally willing to give you a demo. A legit one, somebody who's really knows that their product is good, they can give you a demo. They'll give you a demo for at least a month to run through and you see how good it is. Next, establish your implementation plan. So what do you need to find out? If let's say you have your environment, you know how good it is, you need to look at to actually a good IT setup is supposed to have I normally call it an access register, for example, or call it any other name. It can be an inventory. You need to have an inventory of all your devices or your systems, and you see which ones are critical. Basically, for such a system, you take advantage of plugging into all the systems so that you can be able to know what is happening on every gadget. So I wouldn't even say that you should plug into some and you leave some, unless if your license or your arrangement with your vendor is to a certain level. Sometimes you might find I can only go up to this mile, I can't go beyond, but I need your system. So maybe if those limitations are there, then you have to consider your critical assets. By assets, this time I mean the IT infrastructure that you see as critical. So depending on your agreement with the vendor, look at how critical your assets are, which ones are most critical. Even actually setting up, from my experience, you begin, because if you are in a large organization and it's really large, for example, I'll give you an example. I was with Lafarge Hosting before. It's an organization that is so big and it has in that the IT entity is just even its own registered entity apart from the organization. So it's part of the organization, but it's just its own registered entity. So just to make you realize how big it is, and supports around up to 100 something countries. So basically, you can imagine the number of gadgets. So on that, they would need to find the critical devices to begin with before you try to plug into everything. Then you keep rolling out as you go out. But for small organizations, you can do all at once. Now, it's basically, I've talked about the upper one and I've talked about the deployment. For the monitoring, I'll not go much into this because this would really need like a demonstration. Okay, the most important part on this are the things which I put in brackets. Mind about false positives and confirm that this system can be able to do storage of logs. Now, what this one means is It might run long, but how long can they last? The longer, the better, because when analytics are running, they're using history of past information and the current information, as well as outside sources, the other feeds I mentioned about. So basically, you need to know that how much can it store and up to what extent can it correlate to bring you good analytics. These are now, I'm talking about trends, data trends. Training is very, very key, maybe for management to understand how the cyber environment, how the cyberspace is, how badly are we doing, maybe relating between this year and last year or 3 years back. Now, that's how helpful it could be, but it can be as helpful as the storage it has for those logs. False positives, I cannot stress this much. Just maybe to give a brief, I know I've mentioned much about false positives. A false positive is basically what would look like a real event or a real occurrence, but it's actually not a real one. It's just like a false event that is appearing like as if it's a positive one, as simple as that. So if you set up if the configuration is not done well, you're going to get many of these, and the disadvantage with them is they will make you do too much of trying to resolve issues which are not actually there. So you spend much time trying to resolve, to patch, to everything, but in actual sense, it's a false positive. It's a false event. So if you set it up well, you don't get many of these. I cannot say they completely go out, no, but at least you limit them to some extent. And at some point, if you do it well, it will bring them as low, or it will not be looking critical. Okay? And that's the end. I hope you'll be having questions. Bercy, back to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. I think you've covered it very, very comprehensively. And one of the things that you mentioned in one of the slides is you started by saying you want to emphasize what a SIEM is not, which is very important because you mentioned it's not just a log collection system, it's not just a notification system. You also said it's not just an IDS or an IPS. A SIEM is so much more than that. And I think with that, let me just start a poll on the SIEM. So you'll see a question on your screens just about now. It asks about, does the organization have a SIEM? But also you can answer it in this sense, have you used a SIEM? So either your organization or you personally, have you used a SIEM before? And maybe we can just see the statistics, what the statistics are saying. Okay, so I can see a number of people are responding. So I don't know if you can see this, Chris. Majority of our audience. Okay, I think it's changing. I think it's too soon to give a conclusion. So yeah, just let us know. Have you used a SIEM before? Does the organization have one at least, so that we can know? So far, we are seeing no. Most of the people do not have experience with the SIEM or do not have a SIEM within their institution. And this is a good place to start because now if you don't have a SIEM or if you don't have experience with the SIEM, at least you can form, with this information, you can now, whenever you want to get a new one or you want to get a SIEM, you can use this information to procure one. So as we get more responses, thank you so much, Chris. Let me go through the second part, and then I'll request that you join us after this, and then we can now take more questions. So in this other section that we want to look at, we'll be looking at an overview of the existing SIEMs that we have in the market. And one of the things that you'll realize when you're talking about SIEM is you'll have to consider whether it's open source or whether it's commercial. So that's basically what we're going to look at today. So we have open source SIEMs out there, and we also have paid or commercial SIEMs. So for example, like the slide that you're looking at right now, there's SIEM Monster, there's OSEC, there is NOT, there is ELK, there is Wazoo. So when you look at all these SIEMs, for example, if we can just start by looking at OSIM. which is a very, very good open source SIEM, and it provides a complete SIEM capability with event collection, normalization, correlation. And the good thing is it allows users, like if you are using it, to contribute and also receive real-time information about other malicious hosts in your environment. And then when you look at Snort, for example, Snort does not offer full functionality of a SIEM solution. This is why it's important when Chris mentioned you should know what is a full SIEM and what's not a SIEM. So Snort is not a SIEM per se, but it's a very lightweight network intrusion detection system, and it's used in most of the SIEM solutions that are even commercial. When you look at Elasticsearch, again, Elasticsearch is very powerful, and it's mostly used as a search engine or an analytics engine, as an analytics engine. So whenever you want to query a lot of data, it will serve you very well. And then you have Apache Metron, which is a very, very good open source solution, open source SIEM solution. And the good thing about this, it has like 6 components. So you have SOC analyst. You can have a SOC analyst view to it. You can have an investigator look in it. You can have manager, forensic investigator. So it offers you all these different views into the platform. And then you have others like Wazoo and all that. So these are just some of the open source tools that we have at the moment. And maybe the question I'll ask as I close the first one is, have you or your organization used open source solutions? And what was your experience with the open source solutions that you used? So apart from the open source solutions, even as you answer the second question, at this point, I'll just close the poll for the first one so that we can look at the second one. Okay, so when you look at the commercial SIEMs that are there, so you have McAfee, you have IBM, you have SolarWinds, you have Splunk, RSS. So there are quite a number of SIEMs that are out there. So the biggest question for most of the people is which one should you go for, or which one should you procure? So I think when you look at the site that gives you this intelligence, most of us look at Gartner. So whenever you're even looking at proposals for SIEM, they'll tell you, where does it fall in the Gartner Quadrant, Magic Quadrant? So the Gartner Magic Quadrant is a very powerful tool when it comes to technologies and security solutions, because they do quite a number of analysis on them. So allow me to take a few minutes to just take you through some of the SIEM solutions here. So again, as I've said, it's a visualization tool for monitoring and evaluating the positions of companies, and it uses 2 metrics. So one is completeness of vision, and 2 is ability to execute. So completeness of vision, for example, there are quite a number of vendors who come up with SIEM solutions. What is their vision? So they evaluate that versus their ability to execute and the complexity or the simplicity of the tool itself. So they've divided it into 4. So there's the first one that are leaders. So these are companies that score high on both completeness of vision and their ability to execute. And when you look at these ones, you have people like Splunk, IBM, QRadar, Rapid7. So these are some of the leaders when it comes to SIEM solutions. So if you're looking for a SIEM solution and you want the top, based on what Gartner says, then these are the ones that you're typically looking for. And if we can just do a back-to-back comparison of this. So this was done by Gartner. Again, it's a peer review by Gartner, and it touches on some of the things that Chris was mentioning. So for example, when you evaluate Logarithm versus QRadar versus Splunk, what you want to evaluate them on is on the capabilities. For example, real-time monitoring. In this particular case, we see that Splunk scores very highly when it comes to real-time monitoring. And we also have threat intelligence. Chris also mentioned something about having different feeds that feed into your threat intel. So again, for this particular case, we have QRadar that has a lot of threat intel. In fact, IBM does a lot of research and a lot of threat intelligence and even information sharing. So that's why they score very highly when you look at threat intelligence. So there's quite a number of areas that you have to consider when you're looking at the tool that you want, all the way to deployment support and simplicity. So you can see when it comes to simplicity and deployment, again, QRadar and Splunk are slightly easier to deploy as compared to Logarithm. So basically, that is how you compare these different tools. But most importantly, even as Chris, our first speaker, has just mentioned, is the first thing you have to look at is, again, flexibility in terms of pricing. You have to look at ease of deployment and also support. So in this particular case, we see Logarithm and Splunk perform very well in terms of support. In terms of pricing and the flexibility around there, we have Logarithm that is doing really well in that particular section. So that is for the leaders. And so personally, these are now my takeaways from that particular review. Again, when you look at the leaders in the Magic Quadrant, these are people who are probably highly priced, probably well suited for organizations that are very large. So if you're a multinational with operations in different countries, these are probably the tools that you would be able to procure because they are robust enough. But they're quite pricey, and also the technical know-how needs to be a bit higher because of their complexity. The second part is the visionaries. So visionaries, these are people who, they understand where the market is going or have a vision for where the market is changing and the routes, but they have not yet executed on this, or they're not executing as well as they can. So we have log point on this. In this particular market, and by this I mean Africa, I've not seen a lot of log point users. However, we have the niche players, and a lot of us are here. Most of us who say have a SIEM tool will probably play around here. So niche players, they scope low in both completeness of vision and ability to compete. They do well in a segment of market that cannot outperform large vendors. So in this particular section, we have the AT&T, Cybersecurity, McAfee, Micro Focus. You have the likes of FortiSIEM, SolarWinds, Manage Engine. And again, we can do a back-to-back comparison of these different tools. And as mentioned, again, it's really important to look at things like real-time monitoring, log management and reporting, analytics. So when it comes to real-time monitoring, again, we can see FortiSIEM scores really high on this. Actually, in this particular section, I think FortiSIEM is the one that scored really, really well. When you look at threat intelligence, again, we can see ArcSight is at 3.9, FortiSIEM or Fortinet is at 4.7, and then we have Manage Engine at 4.5. And if I can just delve deep into this, you see, like, for example, like Fortinet, they have quite a number of other products in their suite. So you have different, you have firewalls, you have all these other tools. So all this intelligence fits into their threat feeds, which gives them a richer threat intel, threat intelligence, basically. So you also have application monitoring, analytics, deployment simplicity. For deployment simplicity, we have FortiSIEM and also Manage Engine performing very highly in these particular sections. This simply means it's easier for you to deploy these two solutions. Apart from that, we also have pricing flexibility. When you look at this type of this category, sorry. So pricing, again, we have FortiSIEM, which is doing really well, followed by Manage Engine, and support, technical support and timeliness, we have Manage Engine doing really well. So these are some of the things that you have to really consider, and the niche that you're looking at. If you're looking at either the leaders or you're looking at the niche players, these are some of the things that you should consider and understand. So the last part is the challengers, and these are companies whose ability to execute is great, but they may lack strong vision. So currently there are no companies that are listed here, but this is just a category that exists. So when you're doing your reviews, you can take note of that. So high level, this is how globally Gartner has categorized the different SIEM solutions that exist. So you have the leaders here, the likes of IBM, you have the visionaries, you have the niche players. And I think one of the advantages of looking at the quadrant is that you really get educated very fast about the market's competing technologies and the providers. By looking at this, you can tell where each player is in terms of their vision and their completeness. And it's also easier for you to understand how they're competitively positioned. And this is important because being competitively positioned globally does not mean it's a suitable product for you, because you can be positioned well, but it's for a different market. And so one of the things that is very critical, even as you go through this process of determining whether or not to have a SIEM and what SIEM you should procure, is you need to actually remember that despite what is being said online, like even the Gartner reviews and all these other reviews that exist, most of this is based on international standards. And international standards are really not the same as what we are facing here in Africa. For example, when you look at budgets, a typical SME in Africa will spend less than 10,000 USD. But when you look at the global average for budgets, it's way above the 10,000 US dollars that we are talking about. So our budgets are very squeezed. But also when you look at the technical expertise and skills, as of 2018, when we did the research, the number of certified professionals was around 15,000. In 15,000 professionals. And when you look globally, it's around 4.4 million globally, based on, according to ISC. So you can see the disparity in terms of our technical expertise and also how much skills that we have. So if you have a very complex solution, it might perform well globally, but in your institution, it will not do well because the skills are lacking. And also when you look at how we manage our security, most of us do it in-house, and it's not even a dedicated role, but globally you have managed security services partners who do this analysis for the different organizations that are there. So despite me having said all those things about the reviews, it's very good and it's very good information for you. But you should also keep in mind that we are playing at a very different space in terms of our budgets, in terms of our skills, and in terms of how we generally manage our security. So with that said, again, tools, SIEMs do not fail because you picked a tool that is not in the leading segment of the Gartner. It fails because we don't adequately define our requirements. We don't have the expertise to run this. And sometimes we're just drowning in too much data. So I felt like I should emphasize that for this particular session, and that was it. That was it that I had to say today. So allow me to share another poll with you, and maybe I'll ask Chris if you can join me. Chris, if you can, please, if you can join me. So this now, yes, have you used open source SIEM? So I'll just look at the polls at this point. 61% have not used open source SIEMs in their organization. 9% have, which is really good, because when you use open source SIEMs, they're quite technical sometimes for you to operate. Which of the following SIEMs are you familiar with? I think we are still receiving responses. 13% QRadar, 2% Logarithm, 26% FortiSIEM, 20% Splunk, 28% others. Okay. Okay. Keep sending your responses. And then the last question that I'll ask, which of the following SIEMs do you prefer using? So if you said you've used a SIEM before, which one do you actually prefer using? I can see most of the people have said others. But just let me know which of the following SIEMs do you prefer. If you've used it, which one do you prefer? And again, do you agree with the reviews from Gartner? In terms of simplicity, support, because these reviews were done by users, just like you and I. Okay, let me just go back to the polls. So I'll close the poll in a few. So let's see. Okay. So majority of us do not have any preference when it comes to SIEM. Then followed by, okay, apart from that, we have 24% who prefer FortiSIEM. And then we have 9% who prefer QRadar and also Splunk. So far, we don't have any preference for ArcSight and logarithm. And I'll tell you why I'm asking this. It's because one of the follow-up sessions that we are going to have is we'll have experts in these different SIEM tools just come in and tell us why this and why that. We'll have our own comparisons of these tools. So apart from having Gartner review, we'll have sessions where we have one-to-one comparison of QRadar, Splunk, FortiSIEM. So I can see so far FortiSIEM is the one that is mostly preferred. Feel free to let us know in the comment section why you prefer it. Personally, I do prefer FortiSIEM, yes, because it's simple and again, because I've used it before.